Let's take a look at a few tricks for helping you draw wildflowers and plants. What I love about these is that they're not going to fly away. That makes them a lot easier to draw. I'm going to show you a few tricks that you can use to help you draw wildflowers when you find them. And we'll take a look at two different types of flowers. I'm sitting here in front of a composite, and something that is going to help me draw this is that when I look at these flowers from the top, the outside edge of it approximates a circle. If I'm drawing something and I can find the shape of a circle inside of it, that is going to be really helpful for drawing that flower. And when I want to go foreshorten that flower, it's going to be really useful for me as well. Let me show you why. Let's first think of looking straight down on the flower. If I can approximate the shape of the flower with a circle, I can find the center of that by making crosshairs through it. There's the center of my flower. This diagram then helps me get the length of all my petals here. But you probably already knew that. But it gets a lot more interesting when you want to foreshorten a shape like this. A lot of times you'll see, kids when they draw a flower, they'll draw the flower, here's the flower, there's its stem. So they've taken the flower, drawn the top from this view, and then they have the stem coming down here. If you actually want to draw plants on the angles that you see them, a little bit of foreshortening goes a long way. And it's a lot easier to do than you might think. If you can approximate part of a shape with a circle, what I can do now is, if I'm looking at a circle at an angle, that makes an ellipse. I can find the center of the ellipse the same way. There's the center of my flower. Now, this circle is helping me see the length of these petals . This same trick doesn't just work for composite flowers, but let's say you're drawing a 4-petal flower, a 5-petal flower, a 6-petal flower. Let's try a 5 one right here. Drawing from the top, you probably might have ever had this problem. You're drawing a 5-petaled flower and you draw petal number 1, petal number 2, petal number 3. Somewhere about here you realize that the spacing of these just isn't quite right. All right? If I'm drawing a 5-petaled flower, I draw my circle first. I can space out 5 little tick marks around the outside edge of a circle. It's easy to shuffle these around the outside edge, kind of tweak them a little bit so that they get to be a little bit more centered relative to each other. Now, I just go out to those 5 points . And there's my 5-petaled flower. Let's draw that 5-petaled flower now from a foreshortened angle. So I'm going to draw my ellipse. If I put my 5 points around the outside edge of this circle, right, and this perhaps is my center of my flower here, this ellipse is showing me the length of each one of these petals. Let's make this a tubular flower. Like scarlet gilia, something like that. So anytime you can simplify a flower shape into a circle, that's going to help you dramatically in foreshortening that shape. If you're drawing a species of plant such as a lupin, that has complex repeated shapes. It really helps you to understand what those shapes are that are going to be repeating over and over and over again. Take the repeated part, enlarge it, show how it looks, perhaps spend time showing how one cluster of those parts fits together. You can even draw a line saying that this is this part in here. Right? If you want to then, finish out the drawing by, continuing those shapes there and there, you can. If you're pressed for time, you can just put little place savers in saying, look, there are more clusters of these things going all the way along. And having written notes in along with, hello there, written notes in along with your drawings. Some bits of information are easier to show with writing, some information is easier to show with drawing. Use those both together and you have a very powerful tool for documenting your observations. As I get down to the leaves here, they're making sort of a cup shape here. A way to simplify that in my head is I'm going to draw an ellipse around the top, and here is the cup that makes up the edges of these flowers, of this leaf. And then I can just draw each of the leaflets in, going up to the edge of the cup here. So here's leaflet number 1. Next to that is leaflet number 2. Let's count how many there actually are. On this there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points right around the edges of my cup here. So I get the right number of leaflets. Again, the part that I want to be closest to me here, in the front, I'm going to draw heavier and with more detail. Those leaflets that are in the background, I'm going to do those a little bit more lightly. Not going to be able to see it the whole way. This leaflet comes down here, another leaflet back here. By drawing these ones more lightly, they drop into the background. If I want to then get in there and erase that guiding circle, or if I drew it lightly in the first place, I wouldn't have to do that. I now have, pull this into the foreground even more by strengthening those lines. All right. I can get that shape of the leaf. As you're putting in color notes, we have a really bad vocabulary for color. But the when you say green, try to modify that. Is it a gray green? Is it a light green? Is it a light yellow green? Is it a light sort of greenish white? When you're saying what type of color it is, you can be specific about, as best you can, or compare it to something that you know. What we consider, though, to be apple green, somebody else, perhaps 50 years from now, maybe they're going to have a different idea of what that is. So if you do choose to bring a set of colored pencils or something like that with you, you can add little color notes. If your colors that you put in with colored pencils are not exact, don't worry about that, but modify it with written notes. Like, it should be a darker green than this. That way, you're not, if something doesn't come out to be exactly the right color, you can modify that with written notes. Or don't worry about the color at all, just handle that in a written description. The last thing to do on all of these pages is to make sure that you write your date, your location, your time, weather information, whatever whatever other relevant information you can about your locality. That takes something from being a pretty drawing to a useful piece of scientific information.